So our next panel, it is about our next topic is the control and security of cloud resources, how to be or not to be cloud confident. Our speaker is Marius Zaharia, and if you allow me 1 second. Marius Zaharia, cloud team leader from Société Générale. He has a particular focus on IaaS, PaaS or hybrid architectures and Azure, Microsoft Cloud and Amazon. He is also a principal engineer and cloud team leader. Marius, please, the stage is yours.
Hello everyone. Bună ziua tuturor. Just 1 second. Yes, just 1 second.
No, the clicker don't work with your laptop.
That's logical. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, it's working.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, so thank you so much for being to this session. At the end of the day, I hope the day was fruitful for you. This awesome conference. We'll talk about the cloud and the security in the cloud. And I will start by let's say sharing some of the things. I put my glasses meanwhile. Some of the things that are shared, let's say, almost every day, right, with different breaches that happen in different companies in the world. But one of the things that is particular is that the reason of some of these breaches is the misconfiguration of the cloud services. And I mean, this is the main topic that we want to address today to see how we can solve this topic nicely, let's say like that. My name is Marius Zaharia. I'm based in France, principal engineer and cloud solution architect at Société Générale. You may know Société Générale as being represented here in Romania with Berade. I'm also a Microsoft Azure MVP and co-organizer, animator of the French Azure user group. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Small fun fact, I'm kind of an intruder among you today. I'm a cloud solution architect. I'm not a security guy. So bear with me. But I work every day with the security teams very closely to secure the cloud and the resources in the public cloud. So I will present very quickly a bit the context, and we will go by introducing a bit the principle of the public cloud landing zones, and from there we will go further and focus on the cloud services themselves, CSP services as we would like to call them, and to the principle of the trust of these services, what it is, and what's the solution behind, right? The more and more we develop solutions in the cloud, we tend to give credit to the cloud solution provider for all this security for these services that they provide. But with more and more services that are there, we have so many difficulties first to choose those services. But essentially, the complexity of these services come with many configurations that we don't appreciate them in terms of their exposition to the let's say to the external world, how this is impactful, and they are actually, these services today are configured for a mass consumption. Like you are the consumer for Microsoft, Amazon, Google, whoever. For them, they want to use the cloud as much as possible, right? It's logical. That means the default configurations which are there are not necessarily the most complex and the most closed ones, but they are easy to work at the beginning. but that doesn't mean they are really very secure by default. Okay, so that's a principle first. Second, as you know already, and I should not explain this thing at this conference, like the level of the threats related to cybersecurity exploded in the last years, and especially with so many services, with so many applications running in the cloud. And the cloud is like the uniform surface for the guys. It's like attacking with the same set of tools, everyone in the same time. So this is a particular sensitive topic to address because we are in the public cloud. That doesn't mean if we are on premises, we are, more secure, because I'm not sure we are capable to cover the security of our resources as well as, the big guys there. But in the same time, they are more exposed and we are more exposed with them together. So we are together in this game. So with that in mind, let's speak very quickly about the public cloud, right? Essentially, the public cloud is formed by different, services that you use in the applications. The applications, you run them in environments. These environments need a particular set of capabilities or foundational services around that every application in the cloud needs to run, like needs to have kind of networking, right? To communicate with each other, to have a correct internet access outbound, maybe even. We need to have all the IAM configuration. We need to have the monitoring. We need to have the cost management. All this kind of stuff is a set of services around your application, around your environment, that is named collectively the landing zone, right? So the landing zone is this set of these capacities that help you run an application in the cloud. Now, in this set of features, there's one that is very interesting for us today, which is called the trust of cloud native services. We will focus on it today, right? So what's the point with this trust of the cloud native services? Is the principle of using this service in, let's say, in very dynamic, very agile way by the feature team itself. Let's remember that we are in a DevOps context. You build it, you run it. But in the same time, how can I manage this point of giving it autonomy to deploy the application, but in the same time have the good control? This is the trust principle of these services. So if we think about that, we are moving to the step in which we think, okay, if I take a particular service, I have particular security concerns. And once again, that's something that I'm just reminding you, you're here at the good conference. But we're talking about topics that exist everywhere in terms of, data privacy, confidentiality. We discuss about data sovereignty. There's a thing happening in the US right now. There's a thing all around us, different, sovereign countries intending to have a particular position in terms of, control of those things. For a company which has very important assets like IP, right? The sensitivity of the data loss, the data leakage is almost the most important, I would say. It's very, very, very important. So this is something that's also on the table. And of course, if we're speaking about, public sector, banking sector, financial, or even more, we have very strong regulatory compliance constraints, legal constraints, all these kind of stuff. And of course, we should not forget about the operational risks, which are operational, but still they are in the big list of risks that we, as a security concerned guys, we are interested to cover, right? So these are the main concerns, let's say like that. So if we're going now to see how to become confident in cloud services, I see that expressed in two parts, right? We need a methodology for that, and we need everything that is the tooling around the technical solution, right? So, in terms of methodology, we have this notion of risk assessment and mitigation, and that I learned from my colleagues from the security team, working day by day. Essentially, what we do is we have, for the cloud itself, we have three big layers, let's say like that. The first layer is the one in which we trust the cloud service provider per se. And imagine that this is a big contract. It's not like for every startup going there. For a startup, you just sign. You don't have other choice because this is the public cloud, the way it works. For a larger company, you can go and discuss at some extent with a provider, but that's the point. You not only negotiate with him, you also do all the analysis of the global risk, the global strategy that you have to have with this provider, and that's in the first big book, okay? Generic assessment of the CSP. Transversal risk discussed there. And then we will move to the next step. The next step is to discuss now at the CSP service level. Let's say we will discuss very concretely. When I talk about CSP service, I talk about S3, I talk about Azure storage, I talk about VMs, EC2s, these kind of services that you use every day. So this is the second level in which we focus on the whole service as per se. Why? Because we are in the public cloud. It's much easier to say this service, which is the same for everyone, like virtual machines, everywhere is the same. So we address it once for the whole company. And then it's much easier for the applications to use one it's addressed as a service. And then the third level, of course, is the one that needs to be done at the level of each application per se to do the application risk analysis, and you have this identity card for the application. Say, okay, my application has these risks, I mitigate them this way, residual, and all this stuff. And all that together makes the journey for having the security for your cloud application. Okay? And again, we will make a focus, and we will focus today on those service trusts, right? We don't discuss about how to analyze the CSP per se to make the big agreement with it, how to address an application security file. It's not my objective today to discuss about the middle block. Let's now discuss about the terminology that is used nowadays, and it was matured the last years, actually, one by one. And it's good to remind where we are in this terminology, and not only that defines actually the different functional blocks, different domains. So, of course, identity and access not new in the cloud. It's IAM, right? It controls user, service, application access, all this kind of stuff. Then we move to something more specific for the cloud, which is CSPM, which is Cloud Security Posture Management. And this is where the things become interesting. This is where we are talking about configuration of these cloud services and how they become compliant, how to do the checks, and how to do remediations as well afterwards. Okay? The next would be CWPP, nice acronyms, I didn't invent them. It's Cloud Workload Protection Platform. And the interesting difference is if CSPM is rather at the cloud configuration, you can associate it with the control plane of the cloud. The CWPP is for the workload themselves, is a Cloud Workload Protection Platform. And this is where you're looking inside your resource. It's VMs, containers, server slave, whatever. Okay? Moving to the next, it's CM, should not confound with SEEM, right? This is Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, and this is the part in which you need to have some insights in terms of how the permissions are given, what is the impact of the permissions, not individually like granular, but how to ensure that this surface of permissions is properly adjusted to have least privilege and in the same time some efficiency on that part. Moving to more to the data perimeter, data security, we discussed, of course, about data classification, about encryption of the data, how to ensure the data sovereignty. A bit out of the topic today, but it's good to name it. DevSecOps, again, a particular domain from from DevOps first. We're talking about all the CI/CD chain, how to build your application, how to deploy it securely. Because you may have learned that there are vectors that insert themselves inside this chain, and they are one of the most dangerous vectors. So this is DevSecOps discipline. And then we have this CNAP, and I will show it here to say we have a name for everything together, unified platform across all these domains. This is the Cloud Native Application Platform Protection, CNAP. And you'll find this, I would say, the most often. Why? Because as you will see, these platforms that are developed today tend to include multiple features, functionality at once. But we'll come to that a bit later. Okay? So these are the main domains, let's say like that. And now let's discuss about if you want to have in mind a particular service. Once again, let's take an example. Who's familiar with Azure here? A few of you. AWS? Not more than that, okay. And Google? I was expecting Google in Romania, but it's not so. Okay, good, thank you. So it's quite balanced. And then let's see that no matter what service, when I'm saying Azure Storage, S3, whatever, it's the same. We take this service, and the security team will go and do a risk definition and assessment. And as I evoked earlier, mentioned those concerns, 5 big pillars, but with much more details in. The security team takes that and analyzes this service storage from that perspective. And it says, okay, this is a very sensitive service in terms of data leakage. Why? Because if you leave a storage account open on the internet, that means your data is out, okay? And this is the way you identify your first concern. And then you say, okay, I have these concerns. How do I mitigate that? Like in any other security procedure that you do. So now you want to say, I analyze this and I'm looking at actually at this service. At this time, I'm becoming a bit technical. I'm really going into the Azure portal. I'm looking at the configuration, documentation. I say, okay, there's a property called public access for this service, which can be enabled, disabled. Ah, that's interesting. I can switch it off if I want. Okay? So now, once these mitigations are, let's say, designed, this is a kind of design step. Of course, we need to validate that, formal validation, sign off, all this kind of stuff. And that goes now into a specification set of user stories. It's like a software development at the end of the day. But after that, we need to go and see, we want to develop that part and implement it, right? Implementation may vary, and we will discuss about that in different aspects. And then, like in a software process, integration testing, acceptance, and then go live. Super. Just that we are here in a process, we should not forget, that is very transversal, that is not only for one application, it's trusted for the whole company. That means maybe in 2 subscriptions, 200 to 1,000 subscriptions. So we have to be careful when we say it's good, it's accepted, that will impact all of the guys. So we need to have the good testing stuff and all the stuff. Okay. Speaking about the technical solution, so let's say me as a cloud architect, and at the origin I was developer when I was in Romania, by the way, moving to the cloud to IT Pro later, kind of have that stuff in mind. I should develop a solution for that, right? So let's see the things that we would put in that solution. And there are companies who developed this one, definitely. So this solution should be something that put together all these principles of different security policies of different types that at the end of the day ensure that your account or your resource is secure. And this type of policies are, first of all, report type. Of course, you need a report. This is like a compliance report normally. You may have alerts on top of that to say these are very sensitive, critical, and for that you will have an alert. Okay. Then you should have some policies which are quite sensitive in terms of rules, which should protect you and really block you not to deploy. And the third is, okay, I want to remediate that. I want to really make that value back to disabled because it's already in place practically, and I need to solve that problem. Okay? And then you have some situations with some custom situations which are in between, but essentially these are the rules. We will discuss later about different aspects of the inconvenience and advantages of different things. But now, once we have this principle of the solution, we can go and see what would be the process to execute this kind of stuff. So essentially in this diagram, you have a step in which the security officer configures the policies, okay? And then once it's done, once it's pushed, okay, deployed, the project will start to consume those CSP services. And based on that, the security officer will go and read, acknowledge different alerts that come. And then, based on that, the project should go and remediate those issues. This is the process happening. Now, if we are looking for a particular solution, once again, I'm coming from the Azure world, working also in AWS currently, so it's not a real topic. Actually, it is, and I will say a word on that right after that. So in Azure, there is a thing happening particularly, which is called Azure Policy. And it's something that came later, but it came in a very fortunate opportunity because this service is a native service in Azure embedded in the engine, so that lets you create policies either built in that Microsoft gives to you, or you can build your custom ones, which enforce configurations. And there are different things. It's JSON essentially in. And you work with these policies to do the stuff that I just defined. And you have different effects like audit, which is reporting, deny, that is blocking. And you have all the other effects. They are called deploy if not exist, this kind of stuff, which are remediations. And then once you develop these policies, you can apply them at scale, either at the subscription level or at the management group level that covers large surface and so on. And then, based on that, also you can monitor compliance because you can make interface with other services. Okay, so you have a glimpse of what's happening there, like a list of these are rather built-in policies from Microsoft. And then this is the compliance report. As you can see, it's compliant because, no service raised the issue. And this is how it happens. I'm moving to another useful service. It's like a very basic one, right? Azure Monitor is already there, using we use that every day to monitor the cloud, but naturally we'll integrate in Azure Monitor with Azure Monitor alerts. And this way, we have the two of the features that we described in that diagram ready to work. We just make them work together. Those are the reporting and the alerting. And then we may have things like services like Azure Automation that lets you do things which are impossible to do otherwise, and you do a runbook essentially, and you automate things. Okay. Now, when we go to see that mapped on the solution, we can see now different steps in which the services are tagged. This is what we use in a custom solution for that. Okay? Now, it's nice, but I can tell you it's very costly. In terms of implementation, it's quite costly because you start having, even if you do that for the whole company, and imagine that you do that for a small company, okay? For a larger, let's say, it can be amortized. But let's say Azure Storage. If you go into the real, very strict security risk assessment, for a company that is under regulatory scrutiny, you end up with easily 15, 20 policies per that. So that's one service. So not all the services will have 15, 20, but some of them may have more than. And at the end of the day, it's a lot of development because actually the built-in ones don't really fit. They don't really fit. And you need to customize for that matter, especially if the security is very strict. They don't want the things to do this way. Okay, and we end up even with some limits of the cloud itself. The limit, for example, of the number of policy definitions per management group or per subscription is 500. You end up very quickly on that in this situation. So it can be complicated. But, and once again, if you want to do it and you need it absolutely, this is really, it fits you perfectly in that case. But meanwhile, every company started doing this, and people started saying, why don't I find something on the shelf for that, right? So what's happening there? So now, yes, there are already a few solutions on the shelf. And they are Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Palo Alto Prisma Cloud. I would say these are the most visible currently. And then we have Wiz, Orca, Lacework, others. And what's interesting, we'll go into detail in a couple of them. But there is something that most of them want to address is the multi-cloud discovery. Until now, I only spoke about Azure. By the way, I spoke about Azure policy. When you go to AWS, the things are not that simple because they don't have a real equivalent of Azure policy there. There's a set of different SCPs, RCPs, VPC, endpoint policies, all together, AWS config, Lambdas, open source solution like Custodian. It's not so simple. Not saying that even in Azure, it's something complex, okay? So this is why having a multi-cloud solution, ideally the same, would be great. They do have policy-based posture check, risk prioritization, and all this kind of stuff. But let's go into some examples. Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So I spoke about until now about Microsoft Azure, right? Azure policy. And why am I talking about Azure Microsoft Defender for Cloud? Because actually this is on top of Azure policy as a real functional solution of the thing. And more than that, so it's a real synapse in the whole extent of the term, with many, many functionalities. Remember that today we are focusing mostly on cloud security posture management and a bit on workload management as well. But yes, that's important to notice. And we have CSPM, we have CWPP, and these kind of things again inside. And what's interesting is that how does it work? It works with Azure policy. So if ever you know already how to work with Azure policy, it's quite convenient, right? It's the same engine behind. What's also interesting is that when we talk multi-cloud, it uses the same Azure policy to work in the other clouds. It's quite interesting. There are agents, there are things happening there. There's a mechanism for that, and they use the same. And this, you can have some kind of glimpse. I won't stay too much in the functionalities, but essentially have this list of policies. There are much more, let's say that the one that came initially, the ones that it came with Azure policy per se. So you have all these quite useful ones. They can be also customizable. And when you go there, you can go and per each policy and go and study alerts. You have different steps of addressing that. It explains also what's the real vulnerability behind actually for an Azure storage that you can have, for example, coming from a VM which is already attacked. You can have, you know, credentials, all these kinds of things. It explains all this stuff, and it's useful for you as a security expert, and go see also the vectors. And then afterwards, how to remediate. This is either, you know, you remediate yourself, or you go ask it remediate automatically, or put those protections also in place. That means you cannot deploy from the first step, which is the most secure, even if it's annoying for the feature teams behind. Okay. Another interesting product is Prisma Cloud by Palo Alto. And again, it's multi-cloud. It has even more focused on workflow protection, I would say. And it's more abstract than the cloud functionalities. Is, for example, for Microsoft Defender, if you know very well Azure policy and all this kind of stuff, it's very convenient for you. Now, with Palo Alto, it's a brand new tool. It works by configuration, and there's a specific query language, all this kind of stuff. You have to learn it. You have to step up a bit in competency, but then use it in the same way for all the clouds. And this is essentially how it works. And again, you have many features on that part. You have different policies, coverage per cloud, different dashboards, of course. All this reporting is very powerful for all these solutions that are already pre-selected. I would say Prisma Cloud is a bit... people don't tend to let it do remediations in your cloud, in their cloud, in that case. Because there's still an external SaaS solution, and it will take some time to give enough confidence to do remediations, and probably and possibly never we do that, never. Because we really want to hand over the remediations themselves. The remediations are very dangerous at the end of the time. And the truth is, I didn't say until now, but even for Azure policy option, eventually people tend to abandon remediation themselves. They put a lot of protections. And even if the security teams push a lot for remediations, the operational teams are just frightened because you have automation behind changing your Terraform or Bicep, whatever you use for deploying CloudFormation. That's a lot of, you're not sure what you're having behind that. You have to update your templates and all this kind of stuff. So it's delicate for remediations. Now, this is why actually Prisma Cloud, as it is, can be a good solution actually, because it does all the reporting, all the alerting necessarily, and so on, and in a uniform way, whether it's one CSP or another, which is very practical. One thing I didn't like was that, at least today, I think maybe they are working on that, but the level of granularity of the alerts and selection of the groups and all this kind of stuff is not small enough, and you tend to receive a lot of alerts. As being a small feature team, you receive alerts from many other teams because you cannot practically configure the tool granularly enough. Okay, so you have a view, a bit of glimpse of what's happening. And a small comparison between this. So you have the custom solution, Defender, Prisma, the scope. So if you only use Azure policy, of course, it's only Azure. Both Defender and Prisma cover multi-cloud. And that's, I can tell you from Microsoft's part, being the one who creates Azure, I think it was their very strong decision to go and separate the security features in a totally separate division, let's say. They are not called Azure actually anymore. They are called Microsoft. This is why, because it's multi-cloud. So it is multi-cloud. However, it doesn't really have the fit in the other clouds, like no one really has, right? Prisma is multi-cloud plus a bit more on the Kubernetes side, on this stuff. In terms of the definition of the trust fit, as I made, of course, what I defined is very exact to this custom solution and quite close to the other ones. The enforcement is strong in terms of policy execution because we use Azure policy, and medium strong, let's say, for Prisma. For coverage, it goes from basic to broad in that extent. And of course, your lock-in, I mean, when you say low, that means you're really locked in the cloud, and you're not locked in with a solution like Prisma, right? So this is kind of fast analogy comparison. Up to you to see now what to use next. And then we'll finish by speaking quickly about different challenges that we encounter in this kind of journey. Once again, I spoke about the cost of the implementation, which may be important. Different variations inside a company. So if you are in a large company, you may have different maturity in terms of technology, different DevOps cultures, and when you have a thing that is one fit for all, obviously it's not so obvious, see if I can repeat myself, for everyone to adopt it. And also for this custom development, because this is what I'm referring to, these challenges, it was about this custom development, the fast evolution of the cloud. I mean, this was absolutely the most exhausting thing. Like all the process going from risk assessment to the go live takes probably between 3 to 6 months because it's implementation, testing, all this stuff. After 6 months, when you go to that service, look again, it's about 20% richer in features, which you have to assess again. So at some point you're saying, okay, maybe I'll let someone else assess them. And that's the point, right? And so in that case, we privilege this central trust solution with the common methodology, with existing frameworks. For example, the CSPs define these kind of frameworks, even themselves in the cloud adoption frameworks, these kind of things. And in terms of tooling, Yes, definitely. It's much less expensive, even if you do it in-house, to develop centrally, and don't let the small or the different departments or business units to develop themselves this kind of solution. Even if they say, yeah, we master it, no problem. Okay? And ideally, at this step, as the CNAP solutions become more and more mature, there's a good tendency to go and take a look of their solution first to see if it fits in your house. Because they can do it hopefully faster than you, because they do for everyone. So anyway, they are amortized on that. If they don't do it fast enough, you have a problem with that solution. And privilege a collaborative workflow in this part. I mean, for example, we have seen that some departments or BUs which are faster in adoption because they are more, technological, let's say, they tend to go there and look for the details and be more mature. They share the experience to the others, and we include that in the whole product. And of course, the TechnoWatch is applicable not only for the, cloud DevOps, but for the DevSecOps as well. And you must do this TechnoWatch continuously, especially from the security perspective. Other challenges, variation of risk appetency. Some business units are not at the same level. You may have a small joint venture or with someone else or something like that, which have different risk appetency than the big business units centrally. And so you may have this combination between the common baseline. The common baseline is for the whole group of BUs, and then you have specific security policies for a particular department or business line. Okay? Emergence of multiple solutions for the same problems, as I said, converge, migrate divergent solution to a common shared one. Be careful to monitor these evolutions and the needs. Don't let them move ahead too much. Sometimes they need to go alone, but catch them up as soon as you can, and you need to put resources on that to incorporate the experience into the central one. I mean, it's not specific for this security topic on the subject of the day, but applicable definitely here as well. And I would say the impact of the constraints of the applications, projects. Each project has specificities, right? They have probably a development process which is longer, shorter, more or less specific. So we saw a lot of difficulty for the projects to implement these things now that they are constrained. So the constraints, don't let them develop as they would like. And often the security team doesn't say how to develop a thing. They only say how not to develop a thing. You know that stuff, right? So that's not my job. It's not my job. I'm just saying you should not put that on disabled. So the point is to build together with the feature teams a culture of knowledge and of assets as well, to share these templates like Terraform, like CloudFormation, Bicep, whatever, and share them across the company, because that is a valuable experience. People lose a lot of time of building things that are compliant, and they don't know how to build them. And they don't say it necessarily. They just spend 3 months of struggling with that. They do it. They don't want necessarily to just complain about that, but know that that's there. Yeah. So what about the other public clouds? We discussed about that. We have seen mostly Azure, and there will be other stuff to be seen probably in the future about other parts of the cake, not only the trust of the cloud services, but that will be for another session. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Any question? Whoa, we have plenty.
Go ahead.
Start from here, please.
So, real nice presentation. Okay. At the beginning, you showed a lot of security controls that you can apply to the cloud. IAM, CNPP, CWP. If you only had to choose one of them, what would you choose?
I'm very subjective. I'm a cloud architect and I'm in the cloud team, so I'm forced to say I would say cloud security posture, because I have to secure that every day. But I would answer to you otherwise. The Synapse solution per se is supposed to cover the things more globally, and you activate or deactivate things as per your choice in the Synapse globally.
Why not IAM? Again, pure curiosity. Because personally, I would go first of all to IAM, right? Secured my identity. And
definitely, IAM is the foundation, is even ahead of everything. Before using any cloud service per se, you need the IAM is. I have listed it like general thing, but IAM is the foundation anyway. I mean, you need to start with IAM. I agree with you.
Okay.
Then you need to secure the services.
Okay.
And
Next question.
Yeah. Next question.
Thank you for the presentation. You were mentioning in the beginning about how we basically have to rely on the cloud providers. But a few weeks ago, AWS crashed and we have followed through. Should we start thinking about having a backup to the cloud provider itself?
That's a security-related question or not? I think not, right? It's about resilience rather, right? Yeah. I mean,
if I may, it's about availability, which CIA, so it might be a security question as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, do we have the night for that, or no? Okay, no, no. Yeah, I mean, there's no short answer on that. And to be honest, it's very complicated because the short answer is multi-cloud, right? Multi-cloud is very costly. What is for sure is starting for a certain size of the company, you cannot afford not being multi-cloud. And that doesn't mean it will be easy to do an exit. It's very difficult. But at least you have levers to negotiate with the two CSPs at some extent. And then, depending on your workloads and this kind of stuff, you may give more weight to one CSP or another. Maybe you want to have the data lake on Azure because there's an interesting structure for data lake and so on. Examples.
Next question.
I have a question regarding the legacy systems on multi-cloud. For the new policies, for example, the SPIRE, and when you are implementing a new policy, how well is it, and what do you think about how is it affecting the legacy systems? Because I see in a zero trust environment, it has a lot of impact.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, very important point. Actually, for example, what's happening, that's the good approach. The most important thing is when the new version of something, new policy, something new comes on that environment, that it doesn't break anything. That's the first thing. So the way Azure policy works, for example, in the same way Defender for Cloud, for that extent, is that it starts enforcing the thing from that moment, but it doesn't touch the existing environments, and that the existing issues, they are just listed as non-compliant. And then you have the notion of the remediation tasks. And you go step by step, either you automate if you want, or step by step you remediate your situations. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else?
Do we have any other question? I think no. Thank you for your presentation.